Okay, good evening, colleagues. Thanks for your patience. As some of you know, we were uh, in a different council meeting commencing at 5 p.m., and that meeting went much longer than expected. But we are here now for the current council meeting. This is the one that has been scheduled for initially 6:30 p.m., but we're looking to call the meeting to order at 7:05 p.m. And I will now look to a council colleague, Councillor Wilson, to read the land acknowledgement.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. So just quickly.
I'd just like to point out that today is the Red Dress Day for the...
Thank you. Yes, it is. And I believe some of you participated in the bead making workshop on the weekend, hosted by the Indigenous Advisory Circle. So yes, it is Red Dress Day in recognition of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I know we all appreciate the work of our Indigenous Advisory Circle in creating a lot of opportunities for information sharing and cultural awareness. A few other things, just quickly, we were busy on the weekend celebrating a number of business milestones. First of which was a ribbon cutting for Loose Grip Loft, a new business in town, offering a wonderful space and some hot yoga, long awaited, I think, in Kemptville. We also joined Brewing Oasis to mark their 10th anniversary and hear all about their incredible customer service and commitment to a high quality project and product. Giant Tiger celebrated 65 years, which is pretty wild, and had barbecues on both days in support of North Grenville Community Living and the Youth Center. And of course, in this very theater, the Drowsy Chaperone, which is the Kemptville Youth Music Theater Company, closed out its final shows, and just a really impressive performance, and I hope many of you were able to avail of it. So much talent among our rural youth, and we're drawing even more youth from further afield as North Grenville makes its mark as a hotbed for local theater. A couple of things, and council colleagues, please chime in if there's anything I've missed. The Kemptville Farmers Market opens this Sunday, so opening weekend. And am I correct? It's the hours have shifted to 11 to 3. Councilor Strachan? Okay. Used to be 12 to 4. Now it's 11 to 3. Always, and it is, as it has been in previous years, at the B&H parking lot. Obviously, a mainstay farmers market, and we're very proud of how it's grown. And I believe, Councilor Strachan, are you still chairing the board? No. All right. You've done your time. Also, just a quick reminder that on Tuesday, May 12th, we have 2 important engagement sessions for 43. There's a session in the morning specifically for local businesses, and then in the evening, there is a public session being held at the Fire Hall, scheduled for 6:30 p.m. Of course, we always appreciate having the county project management team as well as representatives from Tomlinson and Aegis coming to share their insights about the timeline and the schedule for this remaining year of construction. Hopefully, by this time next year, we're not talking about 43 because it'll be all done. So things are obviously moving along. And then I know our Busker Fest team would feel sad if we didn't mention Busker Fest, which is coming up the Saturday of the long weekend. They are really excited for the program being offered this year, and they've been hard at work for months. So, that's just a quick overview of just some of the things happening in our community. With that, I'm going to ask council colleagues for consideration of the adoption of the agenda. I do note that there may be some changes, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll just look to our acting clerk to clarify if there's any change in order for items this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a reminder to council that an amended agenda was released this afternoon. There was an item removed from the consent agenda that is to be deferred till a later date. Secondly, staff have brought forward a recommendation about moving item J.3 up to be discussed after item F.2.1. In accordance with the municipality's procedural bylaw, council may reorder the agenda if there are two items on the agenda that coincide. So under the presentation section, we have servicing master plan, but similarly a staff report under the report section. So if council is willing to entertain that, we can address those two items at once.
All right, colleagues, if you're amenable to that, I'll look for a motion to approve the amended agenda. Councillor Sullivan, and a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Strachan. And again, please note there has been a removal to the consent agenda, as well as this change in order. With that, if there are no comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Excellent. That carries. Next, we'll move on to the declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. And that this evening is in regard to any perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising from items on the agenda this evening. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
I'll make a declaration for item J6 regarding the BIA expansion report, and because of owning a business and being councillor. So
Thank you. And as I understand it, a declaration of conflict doesn't mean that Councillor Wilson cannot be present at the table, but she is indicating that she will refrain from speaking to the item and voting, of course.
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. To confirm, Councillor Wilson does not need to excuse herself from the room. However, we would ask that she does not participate in the discussion.
Great. Thank you very much. Oh, I think we'll carry on. My mic is still working. You're okay, Ms. Rubbing? Okay. We've just had a little bit of a disruption with the live stream. We're just going to hang on a sec. My screen says this meeting is being live streamed. Okay. So next, while Ms. Rubbing is sorting that out, we do have a presentation in regards to the municipal fee review, and we are welcoming representatives from Watson and Associates to deliver a presentation on the fee review. Are they online or are they in person, Ms. Rubbing? Okay. 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 Okay, so just hang on. I think we have Sean Michael Stephen and his colleague Jacques Debir with us this evening. And Mr. Stephen, we're just working to get your presentation up on the screen. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we can just hang on. I do want to say that I've been advised by the CAO council colleagues that we do not have anyone from finance here this evening. There are no representatives from our finance department. So with that in mind, I think the intention tonight is to receive the information being provided by the consultants, but not move ahead with any decisions until there's an opportunity to speak directly with representatives from our finance department. Yes, thank you.
And just to add to that, Your Worship, that on they are scheduled to have a staff report come back to the council table for approval and decision making on May the 26th.
And again, we're just trying to resolve a technical difficulty with our live stream, and Ms. Remming is working very hard to sort that out. Okay. Okay. And maybe, Ms. Dunlop, we can review the agenda for May 26th, because I think it might be rather full already. So if not the 26th meeting, perhaps one early in June, but we can sort that out later. Thank you. I know colleagues, while we're waiting to sort things out. We also this evening are certainly receiving a proclamation in regards to community living. If it's helpful, Ms. Remming, I can move on to some of the other items until you can resolve the technical matter. Okay, so for now, we'll just skip over our municipal fee review and our servicing master plan. These are both presentations planned for this evening, and we'll go to deputations and proclamations. As many of you know, as we've marked it for multiple years, it is Community Living Month. And this evening, I'm asking that council colleagues consider a motion to proclaim the month of May 2026 as Community Living Month in North Grenville, that the community living flag be ceremoniously risen at the Municipal Center on Wednesday, May 26th, and that the community living flag remain on the courtesy flagpole for the month of May 2026. I trust, colleagues, that you've been notified of the community living breakfast in the morning, to which we are always invited, and the flag raising will follow the conclusion of that breakfast, as we've done in previous years. So looking for a mover and a seconder in regards to the proclamation, please. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Wilson, thank you. Any questions in regards to the proclamation? We know it's something community living looks forward to doing every year, is bringing families and supporters together and employees together for their signature breakfast. So if you haven't been fed well this evening, you should catch up tomorrow morning and have a hearty breakfast and then join us for raising the flag. I will see if there are any questions. If there are no questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Good? That's okay. So we're going to go back. We got some work done, Ms. Remming, so no problem at all. So we're going to return to the presentation of the Municipality of North Grenville Municipal Fee Review. And we're again welcoming consultants from Watson and Associates to deliver a presentation. And we'll have to leave it there in regards to accepting or deliberating at length in regards to any recommendations, just because we don't have representatives from our finance department here. But over to you, Mr. Stephen, and if your colleague is with you, please feel free to introduce.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. It's just myself tonight. I'm Sean Michael Stephen. I'm a managing partner with Watson Associates Economists, and we were retained to undertake a municipal user fee on behalf of the municipality. So I think did we lose the presentation?
We are just getting the presentation
Okay.
pulled up. We see the first slide.
Great. So if you advance to the next slide and then to the following one, to the introduction. So the scope of the user fee review for the purpose of today's presentation focused on the service areas that included your planning application fees, which was one of the primary areas that was looked at in terms of the annual revenue associated with those fees, but as well public works fees. Next slide, please. Bylaw, finance, office of the CAO fees, emergency protective services, and cemetery fees as well. When undertaking a user fee review for municipal services, the first step should always be, before looking at any fee recommendations, is to first assess what the full cost of service are, to make sure that you can impose fees within the legislative constraints. And so we spent a considerable amount of time with staff assessing the level of involvement in the different types of service areas and individual fee activities associated with them. And that full cost of service assessment include not only the direct cost of the staff participating in those activities, but as well as the other associated indirect support costs and capital costs as well. The indirect support costs would be the costs that are required to allow those frontline service delivery departments to undertake their duties. That include things like HR and IT and general governance and finance that support the delivery of those activities. In terms of making fee recommendations, the level of cost recovery and the level of cost for the different activities what was a key factor, but also looking at the need to consider the affordability of the fees, to simplify the administration of the fees in terms of the types of fees and structures that were imposed, as well as to achieve other policy objectives as well, including reviewing policies that address the missing middle housing within the municipality. Next slide, please. And one more, please. So to look at the legislative context and the authority for imposing the fees, they're imposed under two separate pieces of legislation. The planning application fees are imposed under Section 69 of the Planning Act. The legislation provides that municipalities can impose fees to recover the anticipated processing costs of each type of application. And so that's really key in terms of the approach we utilized with staff, in that you need to understand what the process is. You need to understand what that anticipated level of staff involvement is in the process. And you need to look at that by type of application. And so under the Planning Act, you don't have the ability to set fees at different levels for different types of applications and cross-subsidize your cost recovery levels between application types. Each application type needs to stand on its own from a cost recovery level. So as a simple example, if you decide to set planning application fees for minor variance applications below full cost recovery levels, as many municipalities do, you can't make up that revenue shortfall through higher application fees, higher than full cost application fees for things like site plan or subdivision or zoning bylaw amendments, as an example. If you decide to set a fee below full cost recovery levels, then that's the council making a decision that there's going to be municipal tax funding support to those services. There's no public process required in setting those fees. The fees themselves, or the fee bylaw, I should say, itself can't be appealed. However, each individual fee can be paid under protest and appealed to the OLT as well. Next slide, please. In terms of the other fees that are imposed, they're all imposed under the authority of the Municipal Act and your general fees and charges provisions in Section 391 of the Act, which allows you to impose fees or charges for services and activities provided by the municipality or on behalf of the municipality. And that can also include not only the direct costs, but costs related to administration, enforcement, and capital as well. Next slide, please. So to go over then the findings of the fee review, and first in terms of the full cost assessment and the cost recovery levels. On the following slide, please, we can see the full cost assessment for the fees within the scope of the review. And so in aggregate, when we looked at the annual cost, that was $950,000. This current presentation excludes public works and cemetery as public works fees, or sorry, excludes public work fees, I should say, not cemetery, as public work fees weren't assessed on an annual cost basis because of some limitations in the information that was available. However, for the other areas, the annual cost was $950,000. We can see how those costs break down by major cost component on the left-hand side, with the direct cost being 77% of the cost, indirect about 19%, and capital-related costs for things like the annual rehabilitation replacement cost of vehicles and facility space, about $33,000, or 4% of the cost. And those that distribution by cost type is fairly consistent with what we see across municipalities in Ontario, with the indirect costs representing typically between anywhere from 15 to 20, or sometimes upwards of 25% of the total cost. So right within that typical range that we'd see in other municipalities. Looking at how those costs break down by service area, we can see about 3/4 of those costs are for the review of planning applications, about $713,000, about 11% for fire protection services, and then the remaining roughly 14% of the costs are for the finance office of the CAO and bylaw fees. Next slide, please. So this chart then breaks down those same fee categories, showing you those costs by component, but then assessing also what the current revenue or the revenues would be with the on an annual basis based on your current fees. And so across those 5 service areas, the annual cost would be again about $950,000 compared to annual revenues about $312,000, about a 33% cost recovery level. We can see that differs by service area, with Office of the CO fees performing relatively better than the other areas, about 58% cost recovery levels. But overall, about a $640,000 annual revenue shortfall compared to the full cost of service. The area we see the majority of that revenue shortfall coming from is planning application fees at about $500,000 revenue shortfall compared to cost, which is expected when you see the 30% cost recovery level. And as we saw, the cost of planning application fee reviews represent the majority of the annual cost of these services. Next slide, please. And one more. And then just for cemetery fees, which is presented separately here, just a different approach that was used for the costing. The budgeted annual revenue is about $10,200. That compares to expenses of about $87,000. So again, those current fees well short of the annual cost of service. Next slide, please. And one more, please. So when looking at the recommended fees and the fee structure improvements, some of the key objectives, as I touched on earlier, were overall increasing cost recovery levels, thereby decreasing the burden on the tax levy. That's sort of the overall principal objective. But when trying to do that, we want to make sure that we're considering that need to maximize cost recovery with a consideration of what are the benefits of the services being provided in terms of whether they are generally of an individual benefit or whether they're more of a community benefit, and also what would the impacts be on service utilization. So recognizing that these fees generally exist on that continuum between, or the fees and services you provide exist on a continuum between things that are really of a public benefit, like open park space that you provide, and things that are really of an individual benefit, like a planning application fee. And so the sort of industry wide principle is around services that are more of an individual benefit should be aligned more to a user pay principle and close to the full cost recovery levels, while services are more of a public benefit or public good have a much higher level of subsidy around providing those services. One of the other considerations as well is what would the impact of the level of fee have on the utilization of the services as well. So if you're looking at services that you're providing that are again more of a public benefit, increasing fees at a level where that might dissuade people from using that service would sort of go against some of the objectives of providing those activities or those services. We also want to look at the competitiveness of those fees and the affordability of them relative to the applicant. Look at the industry best practices around fee structures as well. And then staff feedback was quite important as well. We looked at the preliminary fee recommendations and things staff were seeing on the ground in terms of having that day-to-day interaction with the applicants and the users of these services to understand the feasibility and palatability of those potential fee increases. Next slide, please. So to look at some of the highlights of the fee recommendations, the specific fees and recommendations have been provided in detail in the report. But starting with planning application fees, firstly, when we looked at some of the application types, we wanted to separate those fees to recognize where the level of effort related to the complexity of the application differs. So for example, separating the fees for official plan amendment applications to major and minor application types. Introducing a combined fee for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications, which are commonly received together. And when they are received together, there are some parts of that process that are not duplicated, and so there are some economies of scale in reviewing those applications concurrently, and so having a fee reduction policy for those combined applications. With the subdivision administration fees, they were revised to recognize that as the applications increase in size, the costs don't increase in the same linear fashion. So the fee structure designed to recognize that. There's also, similar to the subdivision administration fee, a site plan administration fee that was introduced, and that new fee being phased in to provide some considerations to the development industry around the predictability of that fee relative to applications that have already been in the approvals process, and having that new fee phased in. There were some additional fees introduced for resubmissions and post-approval work to reflect the additional staff effort associated with that. And so when there are applicant-initiated resubmissions, that there would be additional fees related to the official plan, zoning bylaw amendment, site plan, and subdivision fees. New fees for deeming bylaw and telecommunication tower projects. And then there were also some additional refund policies introduced for official plan, zoning bylaw amendment, and subdivision applications. Depending on the stage of work that the application had progressed to, there'd be differing levels of refunds issued if the application was withdrawn. Next slide, please. So the bylaw fees, the structure is generally maintained. There were some simplifications, like for the carnival, circus, and midways licensing fees being consolidated into an event license fee. Where there have been increases, they've been concentrated primarily in animal control, food and refreshment vehicles, and event licenses, where those fees were priced lower than what we saw in the comparative municipalities that were assessed. And then in terms of some additional fees, there were ones recommended for property standards compliance letters and noise bylaw exemption requests. Next slide, please. For the Office of the CO and Finance fees, there were certain fees removed and added. One change was removing the distinction between resident and non-resident fees for the Commissioner of Oaths, signature and birth and death registrations. That was a change that staff wanted to see from ease of administration. And there were new fees added to recognize processes that were being undertaken, but there were no current fees associated for transfer to tax registry processes, overdue tax notices, tax sale, and FOI fees. And then as well, while the municipality was charging for AGCO liquor license letters, that the current process was to have separate fees by department that were involved in that process. It's now proposed it'd be one consolidated fee collected for that purpose that would recover the cost of the various departments that are required to input into that review. For fire prevention, the fee structures have been maintained for the most part. Where there have been increases, they've been focused on compliance letters and reports, inspection activities, firework display permits, and increases in the MTO rate. So where we have fees for emergency response, those fees have been revised to align to the MTO call-out rates. And then there's been a new fee introduced for fire safety plans. Next slide, please. So I'll run through some of the changes to the public works fees as well. There's been a new fee for non-regulatory signs. There's several new entrance permit fees that have been introduced through discussions with staff to reflect the different types of applications received. With respect to the solid waste collection fees, remove the bulky item tag fee. And as well as we separated out the transfer station drop-off rates between public and contractor days to represent the different users of those services on the different days and the incentives that are being provided. With the water, sanitary, and storm connection fee, a new combined fee was introduced in that regard. Remove the reconnection as a result of non-payment fee through discussion with staff. There's a new water and sewer disconnection through demolition fee, as well as added administration fees for the transfer of ownership and bill reprints, and then introduced a lot grading fee as well for Public Works involvement in the lot grading process. Next slide, looking at the cemetery fees, the process that was followed looked at, I guess, initially went through a review of the fees that were imposed and working with staff at the time to review any new categories that were required. Based on the review at that time, there were no proposed changes, but as the review sort of finalized, it was identified some changes that potentially would like to be seen with cemetery fees in the future. And so we did undertake a detailed survey of comparator fees and structures for cemetery for staff's use in any future implementation of further changes to cemetery fees. Next slide, please. So looking at the impacts of those fee recommendations on an annual basis, we can see that including the fee category shown there, we can see the total annual cost of just over $1 million compared to annual revenues of about $322,000, about a 31% cost recovery level. With the recommended fees, that would increase to about $774,000. So about a $450,000 increase in annual revenue associated with these fee increases. We can see the vast majority of that is related to the increases for the planning application fees. So about around $420,000 of that $450,000 revenue increase is a result of the planning application fee recommendation. So increasing those revenues from about $215,000 to about $633,000 annually, improving that cost recovery for planning application from 30% to 89%. Those fees aren't fully at cost recovery levels for planning application fees because the Committee of Adjustment fees, both the consent and minor variance fees, were set below full cost recovery levels in consideration of the fees, the level of fees imposed in neighboring municipalities to ensure that especially on the minor variance side, that those fees, which are largely imposed by or largely applied for by existing residents, continue to remain affordable in comparison to the fees imposed elsewhere. Then the site plan fees as well set slightly below full cost recovery levels in comparison to the levels imposed elsewhere. So not quite at the full cost recovery levels, but still a significant increase in annual revenues compared to the current state. And then about $30,000 in aggregate increase in user fee revenues across the other service areas. So increasing that overall cost recovery levels from about 31% to 75%. Next slide, please. So the last item to highlight then would be just some of the potential recommendations around affordable housing and missing middle housing fee incentives. Next slide, please. So in our review, what we wanted to identify were fee-related tools to support these objectives in terms of support in terms of affordable housing and missing middle development. One of the key inputs into our review was looking at the municipality's housing needs assessment and some of the recent Housing Accelerator Fund initiatives and building off of those, as there's been a lot of good work done there already in terms of moving these objectives forward. What was emphasized through those reviews were trying to reduce upfront costs related to priority housing types, and in doing so, using the community improvement plan tool as the mechanism to deliver those targeted fee incentives. And so where those had been proposed was around potentially expanding the CIP area to other more broadly across the municipality, considering grants for building permit application fees up to $2,500 per year as it relates to the priority forms of housing like affordable rental and medium and high density housing. potentially extending the CIP grants to planning applications as well for nonprofit housing and rental housing. Highlighting that there had already been the ARU, additional residential unit initiative, had already been implemented through the Housing Accelerator Fund. And then to the extent further initiatives like these are implemented, to make sure that there is a process in place to monitor the effectiveness of these programs and the take-up of them, potentially looking at annual budget allocations for these programs to help allocate funds towards them, make sure that they are available and planned for, and monitor the take-up of those. And as well, one of the benefits to note in terms of using the CIP as the tool to provide these incentives is that it does allow the eligibility criteria to be well defined and monitored and maintained. Next slide, please. So that does conclude the overview of the recommendations. I am here if there are any questions at this time, happy to answer those.
Okay, great. Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
It's not work. Oh, there we go. Thanks. Excuse me. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Stephen. My question, I guess, is not to do with the policy in terms of affordable housing and missing middle, but to the earlier part of your presentation. So from what I understand, the rationale that we're using is to increase the cost recovery from about a third to 75%, but in the process, decreasing the fees that benefit the community. You referred to it as burden on the levy, and increasing what I would call user fees, or those fees that have individual benefit. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. So your understanding of the premise of how the fees would be set is correct, but we did not actually decrease any fees. The fees that were already set at a level where they were highly subsidized because of the level of community benefit, those may have not been increased further, but there were not situations where we decreased those.
So basically, the rationale for increasing the cost recovery is to look at raising what I would call user fees, those that benefit individual, that have an individual benefit.
That's correct, as well as there may have been other fees that had more of a combined individual public benefit that we felt could be raised without impacting the affordability of those or the service or the utilization of those services. So they would have been fairly modest increases in those cases.
Thank you. Can I have another question? This is through you to Director Finley. It's more of an operational question. I noticed that we're introducing a fee for lot grading. Now, I've had a number of cases over the years where someone building a single home in the rural part of the municipality, they've had issues with the lot grading of a neighbor, a new build beside them. Does this mean that we now have the capacity to do post-construction review of the lot grading? Or is this just to submit a fee to submit the lot grading plan? It implies to me that we're going to be charging a fee to do a post-construction review. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor. The intent behind the fee is to capture costs that we do when we're reviewing the proposed plan. So it's a proposed grading plan that's being brought forward that we look after. And then subsequently, it is typically a declaration from the engineering consultant that provided the plan. Excuse me, once they are complete, they provided a declaration that has met the proposed plan. So we don't, Public Works does not go out and do a final verification of that.
So the person or the company, the professional providing the lot grading plan certifies it as built, as meeting that plan. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And in the absence of other hands, maybe I can just ask a couple of questions of our consultant, and I will surveil the scene for other questions. Certainly, what I see in your proposed schedule of planning fees in regards to zoning bylaw amendments, subdivision applications. In the case of subdivisions, you're proposing a 5-fold increase from 3,500 to nearly 20,000, and you've tripled the per lot fee from $50 to $153 per unit. So that's a fairly dramatic change. I also note that the zoning bylaw amendment fees for major goes from 2,000 to nearly 9,000, and for minor goes from 1,000 to nearly 6,000. This strikes me as a dramatic increase, and I can tell you on behalf of myself, sitting at the council table, we often hear from residents in regards to minor zoning bylaw amendments. And I would suggest that if we were, not you, if council was to implement this fee structure, it would be cost prohibitive in certain cases for some zoning bylaw amendments to proceed, particularly on the minor side. If the resident in question was not confident they would achieve that amendment. So one of my questions would be, was the viability of the new fee structure assessed in regards to looking at the number of zoning bylaw amendments we receive and the degree to which those are being generated from sort of a homeowner who isn't necessarily a developer, but someone just looking to do something on their property that our current zoning bylaw provisions don't allow. We're at a time when we're being asked as a community to facilitate, a lot of intensification, for which I don't think all of the zoning provisions are currently aligned. I know we're working there. So I'm wary of some of the proposed fees because of the dramatic nature of the increase, and I would be curious to better understand how some of these fees were contemplated, not from the point of cost recovery for the municipality, but from the viability of the major increase in fees that would be imposed on homeowners.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. So I'll start maybe with I'll break those into sort of the minor and then the major application types in terms of my response. So when we look at the subdivision application fees and the major zoning bylaw amendment fee as the two of the three you mentioned there, these are not application fees that really are common to see by homeowners, especially obviously on the subdivision side, but still on a major zoning bylaw amendment fee. And so the fees were looked at in terms of these, if you're looking at doing something major, a major change of the zoning bylaw amendment or a subdivision application, this is largely to the individual benefit of the proponent. And in terms of the level of fees, they were assessed in terms of comparison to the fees imposed in other neighboring Eastern Ontario jurisdictions, and they're within those ranges that we see elsewhere. So they're not seen from that standpoint as cost prohibitive to the types of projects that those fees would be applied for. When we consider the minor zoning bylaw amendment fee, the types of sort of improvements that you're referring to, or existing homeowners looking to make a change to their property that the zoning bylaw may not allow, typically those types of changes would be accommodated through a minor variance application if it's a minor change to a minor deviation, I should say, to the zoning bylaw that can be accommodated through a minor variance application. And that's one of the reasons, one of the primary reasons why those fees are still set well below full cost recovery levels, is to continue to allow those to be affordable for your existing residents who are predominantly applying for those minor variance fees. With the minor zoning bylaw amendment, this is obviously a more significant change that can't be accommodated through a variance, and so the fee being set at a higher level of cost recovery. If what is occurring perhaps is that there's required changes to your zoning bylaw to implement the provisions that you're intending to implement, and because they haven't yet occurred, there's minor zoning bylaw amendments that are required that can't be, or changes can't be accommodated through a variance. Then I'd say if that is what's occurring right now, and you're anticipating a change to your zoning bylaw that will essentially make a lot of those minor zoning bylaw amendments go away in the future, and they might become variances or not required at all, then I think that if that was the case, then you could potentially consider phasing in or deferring the increase for the minor zoning bylaw amendment increase until you do have your new zoning bylaw in place. I think that would probably be a reasonable implementation plan.
And if I might, and I'm looking at other hands, in light of, I think some of the dramatic increases being proposed here, I would concur that, we have a highly varied development community. We have some small builders, we have some large builders, and quite frankly, we have a lot of innovative residents who are looking to be creative on their properties and optimize housing arrangements to accommodate multi-generational families in the same home. So I'm just reflecting myself that I think some phase-in approach for dramatic increases in fees would be prudent and would also allow the community writ large to better prepare for increases that I think, might not have been foreseen in the way that have been proposed here. So certainly, I know this evening we're just engaging with you, sir, and appreciate your time, but I thought I would signal my observations as they exist now. I do also note that the proposed minor variance fee triples. So while certainly one could argue more attainable, moving from 650 to 1,500, it still represents a tripling of those fees. And I think there are people in our community that would feel rather surprised that it's gone up so significantly in a matter of days between the bylaw being one thing or the fee structure being one thing on a certain day and another thing on the day that whatever increases we approve at this table are implemented. So I would like to see some reflection before the staff report comes on how we consider both education and implementation of some of these dramatic fee increases. I don't know if council colleagues, if there's anything else to add, Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have two questions, if you don't mind. So my first one is, given these dramatic increases that are recommended, how does this compare to other municipalities in similar size? And have we not kept pace with the increased fees along the way? Has there been a previous review and a previous increase along the way?
Thanks for the question. To my knowledge, there has not been a comprehensive review of the planning application fees, at least recently, if at all. And so this sort of impact is fairly typical of what we see when we review fees with a municipality that hasn't looked at them comprehensively before. So looking at the 30% cost recovery level for planning application fees, currently, that's quite common to see when a municipality hasn't looked at their fees before. And so when you're looking at those in comparison to neighboring municipalities, that's part of one of the elements to consider is have the neighbors looked at their fees comprehensively as well, because they might be well under full cost recovery levels as well. But nevertheless, when we did look at these fee recommendations, they are within the ranges imposed by the comparative municipalities in the surrounding geographic area.
Okay, thank you. If I may, one more question. Thank you. With respect to slide, I think it was slide number, anyway, it's about the cemetery. Here, it's slide number 9, 10. What does the SWB stand for, please? Costs?
Yeah, sorry, apology, that should have been written out. Salary, wage, and benefit costs. Those are the resource costs of those individuals.
Okay, thank you. So when it says revenues, $10,220, that's for 1 year, I assume.
Yes.
And expenses, $87,000. So the revenue would be from sale of plots, I'm assuming. Then is there no, the trust fund that's for perpetual care of a cemetery, does that not go towards the expenses?
There's only the income earned on the fund can be
Okay.
utilized, so you can't draw from the fund itself for those expenses.
So that fund then has not kept up with their requirements either for care and maintenance of the cemetery. And was the columbarium included in the calculations in this, or given consideration? No?
Future columbarium?
Yeah, it's supposed to be, well, the plan says June, but I don't imagine it's going to be that quick, but this year.
Yeah, no, those costs were not considered.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, colleagues? Maybe just 2 other things that I noticed that I just wanted to ask for a bit of clarity on. At this table, we certainly had a robust discussion about food refreshment vehicles. I don't know if Ms. Martin would remember when we considered and reconsidered those bylaws, if we imposed a new fee structure at that time. I feel like we had, and I see a notable increase again to the annual renewal fee. For example, for a refreshment vehicle going from $150 to almost $300. In light of some of the more recent changes that I remember at making at this table for licensing fees, I'm just curious if that was taken into account when we're looking again at, I understand that the need for some amount of cost recovery when it comes to a variety of activities within the municipality, but I guess it's notable to me that after already increasing, as I recall, some of the fees for refreshment vehicles, we're looking again to increase them notably. Ms. Martin, I don't know if you remember when we did that refreshment vehicle bylaw, if we imposed a new fee structure?
Yes, Ms. Lazat Officer Lazat just texted to say that originally the fees were $350, but we did reduce the fee down to $250 and created a $150 renewal fee for returning businesses. So at the time, when we did look at the refreshment vehicle bylaw, quite a few years ago now, that was the direction that was given by council.
Thank you. And again, I think it's just context for how the community receives and businesses in our community and residents receive and have to navigate a fairly new fee structure in certain cases that I think will look and feel relatively different. So I know tonight is for information, but perhaps looking at Ms. Dunlop in terms of a staff report, it would be very helpful if all of the proposed new fees, both that comparison between current and the proposed new fees could be sort of consolidated into one chart, because we're having to read through this report and the fee structure is interspersed in the report. So it's I think hard for us to discern all of the information. It's a fulsome report and a robust report, but certainly I think on behalf of the community it would be helpful to have a consolidated chart with all the different fees in one place, so we can better understand some of those differences, if you will, and we're not missing something in terms of the report. Perhaps the only other comment I would have at the present time is I know that for the missing middle housing, we're looking at relying on a CIP that we're going to discuss later this evening. So I think it's hard to, I think, ascertain at this point if the CIP is developed will achieve the intended effect, because we're still really new in a CIP when it comes to incentivizing affordable housing. So at this stage, I look forward to more discussion to better understand whether or not additional measures should be taken. So, and again, I think about that minor variance scenario where lots of people are coming with a minor variance application to permit them to do things on their property that otherwise hadn't been foreseen. So I think the balance between those minor variances and what the Affordable Housing CIP proposes is yet to be determined. So I do wonder how we navigate that landscape, given that we're so new in the affordable housing CIP world, but I know we'll have a longer discussion later this evening, so we'll see. Any other comments, colleagues? Okay, so if there are no other comments, I believe this evening we're going to thank Mr. Stephen for being here and really leave it at that, and look forward to a forthcoming staff report. And I presume, Ms. Dunlop, maybe at that time there'll be some additional conversation in regards to how some of these fees may be received by the community.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, once we determine the date for the returning staff report, as well as although the charts are included in the report embedded within the agenda, we will make sure that we have a clear picture of current and proposed, and also recommendations of how we move it forward.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Stephen, for being here this evening.
You're welcome.
Oh, did I miss anyone? Did anyone else want to add anything? Okay. Just heard a voice. Just know where it was from. Okay. Ah, okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stephen, very much. Okay. So next, I understand we're moving to the servicing master plan, and we have representatives from JL Richards here this evening. Is that correct? Yes, we do. Excellent. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Matthew Mercuccio, a senior environmental engineer with JL Richards and Associates. And I'm just going to provide a summarized overview of the water and wastewater servicing master plan update that was prepared recently. Next slide, please. So in the presentation, going to provide a brief overview of the master planning process, provide the project background and existing conditions in of the infrastructure in the community, future development and growth projections, and the proposed implementation plan to accommodate the growth of the community, as well as where we are at right now and next steps. Next slide, please. A lot of information here, but boiling down that the master planning process that was completed was conducted in the framework prepared by Municipal Engineers Association, Class EA process. It's a planning tool that identifies infrastructure and other requirements for existing and future land use and needs, and it's an environmental assessment process. This project in particular was a master plan approach 1, which follows phase 1 and 2 of the Class EA process. So it is a broad level assessment of the needs, and kind of more of an assessment to establish projects moving forward. And so it's a broad level assessment, and some and may require a further detailed assessment at project specific levels. Next slide, please. Briefly going over the existing water distribution system. There are a total of groundwater well sites within the urban service area of Kemptville. Each of them have well with well pump, sodium hypochlorite disinfection, and accompanied by a boosted pumping station and storage reservoir. And so those well sites are Alfred, Van Buren, Kernahan, East Quadrant, and Northwest Quadrant. And then in addition to those well sites, there is the boosted pumping station and reservoir at Equinel. And one thing to note is all these facilities are interconnected. And so they all work together to maintain water pressure and flows to service the entirety of Kemptville. Next slide, please. For the existing wastewater system, it consists of several catchment areas, effectively a network of gravity sewer systems that collect the sewage from developments and properties and conveys them to a sanitary pump station. There are 6 sanitary pumping stations in Kemptville. For the pump stations convey flow directly to the wastewater treatment plant. Those are Bridge Street, Equinel, Tempo, and Colonnade. And then there are also 2 intermediate pump stations where they're within the system and not directly to the wastewater treatment plant. Black Horse pumps to Equinel, and Kempton Court, I believe, goes to Bridge Street. And then, yeah, these pumping stations go to the wastewater treatment plant to collect, and that is, and it all flows by force main and not by gravity. And then the other part that we focus on in the master plan is a few siphons that join to Curry Street near Bridge Street pumping station. There are 3 siphons that effectively go underneath Kemptville Creek to cross it. There's one siphon at Vista Crescent, another at Jack Street, and another at Water Street. And so those were requested to look at specifically in this master plan. Next.
I'm going to stop you there. It's lots of information, and Deputy Mayor wishes to ask a question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, for indulging me. Just since we're on this slide, I have one question. Later on in the agenda, we'll be looking at the County Road 19 sanitary design proposal. So just in terms of catchment areas, I don't know if you can enlarge that, but I can on my screen. But County Road 19, would the new sanitary line, maybe this is a question for Director Finley, I don't know. Would the new sanitary line service catchment area 6 or catchment area 5?
Excuse me. Thank you for the question through you, Madam Mayor. The way the design is currently being reviewed is that it would tie into catchment area 6. So it would there'd be gravity flow to the Colonnade sanitary pump station. So that's the current plan. We'll have to see how the detailed designs work out if there needs to be adjustments, but that's what we're looking at right now.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for that question, Deputy Mayor. Next slide, please. And so this is a brief overview of the growth projections over different periods of time, 5 to 10, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, and 20 plus years. These numbers were developed with input from municipality's planning department, looking at approved and planned and potential building permit applications, kind of a snapshot of what was anticipated at the time. And so, as you could see, the service population estimate has a quite rapid growth planned, going from 7,000 currently to over 36,000 in the 20+ year mark. And so lots of growth, and it's so there's going to be a lot of development in the infrastructure to accommodate this growth. Next slide, please.
If I might, I think we have some other questions. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Honestly, this is the last question I have for this presentation. On this legend for the future service population growth projections, again, I'm fixated on County Road 19. What does the light yellow shading indicate versus the dark or darker, bolder yellow? Is it?
Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
So this was a figure that was pulled from the report. This is kind of the build out projection. So the lighter is denoting a previous period of growth. So so we had figures for the 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, and it's just showing the growth that happened in the previous periods. And so it's counted at the light yellow is residential. I think this figure was from the build out. So the dark yellow is the developments that happened in the build up period. And then the lighter
okay.
yellow has happened in the previous.
Well, I know that we're looking in the official plan of changing that land use to commercial enterprise, I believe, not residential. So that would put a different load, I think, on the sanitary, or is that factored in? Director Finley, if you
Sir,
want to take that
Mr.
one.
Finley?
Yes, thank you for the question through you, Madam Mayor to Deputy Mayor. I believe it is already looked at as commercial. In terms of trying to understand flows, we applied a residential flow count to it so that it could accommodate, knowing commercial is typically lighter. So that's the numbers we use to try and generate that flow count that was through there. Of course, once the development comes in, we'll truth that against the engineering design. But that's what we looked at when we were trying to determine what kind of flow we would see in that pipe. But I believe, and I'll direct that to Ms. Burton, that the plan, the understanding is that it's a commercial corridor.
Thank you.
And if I might, I have a similar question, so I might as well, it's not similar, but related. So we're in the process of doubling our sewage treatment plant. That's my understanding. We are looking at increasing the capacity significantly. I don't quite understand the short, mid, and long-term projections. And perhaps Mr. Finley or Ms. Dunlop, you can help us understand with such a significant infusion of funding to notably expand and optimize capacity in our sewage treatment plant. I'm surprised to see such a small incremental gain up to 2036. So that confuses me. Perhaps someone can elaborate why we wouldn't see more gains in terms of a serviced population estimate in the next 5 years, given that we're nearing the completion of Phase A and I think proceeding to Phase B relatively quickly.
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. So when we originally looked at the water pollution control plan expansion, its outlook actually ran from the time it was reviewed 2018 for a 20-year outlook. So the projected lifespan for that piece was to run to 2038. Sorry. Now what we are seeing is there is higher growth than what was kind of anticipated back in 2018. Things have changed a little bit, as we all are aware, council is aware. So that's where we're seeing some of that. We do identify that in the short term, there is not the deficit for the water pollution control plant. It's not to the potential of that midterm or shortly after that 2036 mark is where we're looking at that potential for the need for that potential expansion. So it does kind of align slightly 2038 versus 2036 of the timing of a new expansion being required, again, with the amount of growth that we're seeing.
In terms of the nearly $50 million we've gotten from the government of Ontario and obviously the cost recovery we would do with development charges and what have you, I'm hearing you say that the demand for service land may be less than what you expected, or is it that the capacity in the plant won't be available until 10 years from now?
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. So the current expansion that's taking place is sufficient for up to that 2036 timeline. And then at that 2036 timeline, we'll have to look to expand again based on the population growth or the flows that we anticipate seeing.
Okay, I'll leave it there for now. Thanks. All right, you can carry on.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to determine the future servicing needs, we had to calculate the deficits for water wastewater servicing. It was the projections were based off of historical flow data, North Grenville engineering design standards, as well as MECP design guidelines. A water model was also looked at to look at the existing infrastructure conditions and run it against the different growth periods to optimize and identify infrastructure improvements. The water storage was calculated based off of MECP design guidelines, based on the sum of the fire flow storage, equalization storage, and emergency storage allowances. And then wastewater servicing as far as pumping stations and the treatment plant was based off of design sheets, also based on historical flows and municipal and MECP design guidelines and standards. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of the growth constraints for water and wastewater in the different periods, going from the top with water distribution. No capacity deficits were identified in the existing conditions. In the various growth periods, the certain water mains and booster pumping stations would require upgrades to supply the required pressures for the growth, as well as to reach the new development areas. And in addition to that, the municipality is also working on rehabilitating existing aging water mains based on previous condition assessments. In the case of water storage and water supply, deficits were identified starting in the midterm, the 5 to 10 year, and then grow from there, indicating the need to expand at that time. For wastewater conveyance, the master plan focused on Curry Street and the siphons leading to Bridge Street. Looking at the short term, certain sections of Curry Street were identified to require upgrades and expansion to accommodate the flow. And then regarding the siphons, the 3 siphons were constructed in the 50s and 60s. And so based on the age, as well as I think one of the siphons, there's some surcharging that the siphons experienced recently due to some high flow events. And so looking at that, the intention is to do condition upgrades as well as twinning the siphons in the future in order to provide operational and maintenance redundancy. For wastewater pumping, we noted that upgrades to Bridge Street sewage pumping station will be required to accommodate peak flows, and then in the build out Colonnade sewage pumping station would require upgrades. And then the wastewater treatment plant, these deficits were looked at using the upgraded capacity, like after the current construction is completed. And so seeing in some deficits in the mid and long term and build out. Next slide, please. So we're going to look at the proposed implementation plan for the Pago water system. This is just a summary of the proposed projects to accommodate the growth periods and the demand. And so for water distribution, the primary projects is duty pump upgrades to the various booster pumping stations as they're needed throughout the system. For water supply, because of the magnitude of the deficits of the supply, that would if we were to keep with applying new well sites, it would, our estimate, like we would need several new well sites in addition to the 5 currently existing to accommodate the future deficits. And so in discussion with the municipality project team, there was a decision to look into a surface water treatment plant for the long term. And but however, because that requires a Schedule C, Class CA, much more in depth than what was reviewed in this project to locate to find a location to assess environmental impacts. It's a long study as well as the detailed design construction. It's a lengthy process, and so to address deficits in the near term, it was decided that it was proposed that at least one, maybe 2 well sites would be needed to address as an interim solution while study is going on for the surface water treatment plant. And then each of those well sites, those well sites would require a Schedule B Class CA, as well as geotechnical and hydrogeological investigations to find a suitable location, as well as to test the groundwater to make sure that there's sufficient capacity that we require. And then as far as water storage, it's adding new storage facilities at existing and the proposed new well sites. There's already space available at East Quad and Northwest Quad. They were designed with provisions to add another above grade reservoir at those locations, and then they could be supplemented with the new well site locations. That said, the recommendation was to have undergo another study to have a more holistic review of the water storage strategies. One of the options that was in detailed consideration was a water tower, but that requires a more detailed study than what was in this master plan. So further study would be needed there. And so, yeah, and then just one note with the costs, these were 2025 costing. They weren't inflated to future costs at the time. Next slide, please. On the wastewater side, big ticket items was this wastewater treatment. These were based on the costs were based on recent projects that were tendered that we were involved with in Ontario. The expansions were phased to long-term and build-out flows. Then wastewater pumping, upgrades are planned or are proposed for Bridge Street and Colonnade. The costing of which was assumed to be new pumping stations. However, these require a Class EA to review the feasibility of whether upgrades to the existing facility versus a new pumping station would be more feasible and cost effective. And then in addition, there's intention to service industrial properties east on the other side of Highway 416 with water and sewer, which I failed to mention in the previous slide, but I'll speak to that now. So to service the 416, both water, sewer and water mains will need to cross underneath Highway 416, which will need extensive study, and then a new sewage pumping station will need to be designed there as well. Wastewater collection system will need a flow. We recommended a flow monitoring program for Karishi and the Sipans. to inform the detailed design. And then the replacement and twinning of the siphons are being phased at the various periods to spread them out. And then finally, another study that was recommended is the development of a trunk sewer model similar to the water model on the drinking water side, as a way of having a better granularity to identify potential upgrades and needs in the system. Next slide, please. And so as far as where we are at now and next steps, as far as this master plan, the 30-day public review ended April 18th. And so the note is the projects identified are recommendations, kind of a blueprint or a guide to inform future projects. And the municipality can choose if and how to proceed. In terms of the upcoming projects that are being implemented in now or in the near term is duty pump upgrades to Northwest Quad and Carnahan, and as well as initiating exploratory geotechnical studies and the Class EA to locate and test potential new well sites. On the wastewater side, I believe the proposal, the tender for the Schedule B Class A for the Bridge Street pump expansion is out on the streets, and as well as separate study for the trunk model sewer development, as well as the flow monitoring and detail design for Curry Street and the siphons. And that concludes the summary and presentation. Thank you very much for having me here, and I'm open for any questions.
Okay, so I see Councillor Sullivan and then Deputy Mayor. Just Councillor Sullivan.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to our very knowledgeable presenter. Certainly a lot of information here that some refresher for me and some certainly new information. One of my questions is, with the current expansion and the future projections of the need, have you given consideration to receiving septage waste at the plant? Because there is a strong request, demand, or need, I believe would be the better word, for having the septage from rural residents brought here rather than, I mean, we're looking at action, a climate action plan, and trying to get as fewer emissions. So having all the septage to be trucked miles away from here, does this plan include accepting that locally?
Thank you, Councillor. The master plan didn't go into that detail in terms of the treatment plant. It looked at the capacity, understanding that it's currently undergoing upgrades. I believe Mike Friendly can speak a bit more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Sullivan. The second phase of the expansion that we're currently undergoing, or currently planning for to undergo next year, is the expansion did contemplate septage receiving. The construction of a septage receiving station is being contemplated under the second phase. So that'll be brought forward to council to make that final decision on that. But yes, it was incorporated into the design and looking for moving forward as this phase.
Okay, thank you. So then going forward past, I guess this phase 2 is to meet our needs until 2038, is that correct? And then we would possibly need to expand again, and would that include accepting septage?
Thank you for the question through you, Madam Mayor. Once we have a septage receiving station there, we would continue to incorporate accepting septage moving forward. Yes.
So it wouldn't have to expand, it could just continue to take whatever it gets?
It would have to be studied,
Expanded.
but understood that we would be accepting it. Yes.
Okay, good, because I think that's an important feature that we probably should pursue. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, any other questions at this stage? Nothing? Okay. We appreciate you coming very much. Thank you. This is very thorough and substantial and lots to mull over. So appreciate your very careful consideration of our water and wastewater needs and proposed investments. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Council colleagues, I'd like to actually propose a small break if I could to just regroup. I know we've been meeting since 5 and our attention spans are required for the next part of the meeting as much as they were for this one. So if I can have a mover and a seconder for a small break, Councillor O'Sullivan and Barclay. Thank you. And I will call the question. All in favor? Great. Thanks. Okay, council, we're resuming our meeting here in council chambers on Tuesday, May 5th. And we had, as you might recall, changed our agenda so that we could hear from Mr. Finley in terms of North Grenville's water and wastewater master plan. So I'll invite Mr. Finley to proceed with his report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the summary of the report just in lines with the presentation that was done by Mr. Mercuccio in identifying that over the next 20 years, we do see there's significant growth in the service area. And with that growth, it will require some significant investment in infrastructure to be able to meet the servicing demands. We did try through the report to break out short-term, mid-term, long-term, and build-out scenarios, just to give an idea of magnitude of potential costs within those timeframes. So our short-term was 0 to 5 years, our mid-term was 5 to 10, long-term was 10 to 20-year lookout, and then, of course, we had a build-out, which is beyond 20 years. Within those, we do note that the short-term, the 0 to 5 year timeframe, it does estimate approximately just under $30 million of potential projects that need to be funded for water and wastewater systems. And this does not include the current water pollution control plan expansion. In total, the plan does identify close to $390 million worth of potential investments for that infrastructure. So although there are no direct costs for the financial or the master plan, of course, it'll approval of this plan would have us moving forward with potential future costs and future studies that Mr. Mercuccio did identify. One thing we did want to note through as we were going through the master plan, we did have some of the development community reach out, which just some concerns from the plan that worries that they were being held to those timing periods that they are identified in and potential delays in their projects. As I mentioned, we tried to identify how growth would look 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, and of course, a build out. What we do want to note for council is that this master plan doesn't dictate when developments are approved, and we don't use this master plan in a prescriptive nature to lock in development into these time periods. We understand this plan is used to understand that development's fluid, we're constantly changing, and the intent is to better understand what infrastructure is needed to support the development, not to delay the development. Like I mentioned, there's about $390 million worth of infrastructure needs if we weren't to full build out. So in a perfect world, we'd look at that today, but of course there's financial constraints there. So we use this plan to gauge some timelines, and as developments are updated based on the best information we receive, we adjust accordingly. And again, the plans are reviewed every 5 years to see what kind of estimations were met and which ones need to be adjusted. I will note even with the current plan, because we had to look at growth projections from 2024, we did identify some projects that were at a 5 to 10 year look at that are actually having their building permits are issued and they're under development now. So we do recognize there is no hold on those periods. It just uses an adjustment piece of infrastructure. So if we see more development ahead of those timeframes, that infrastructure is going to be needed earlier. If the development doesn't come as quickly as we've looked at, some of that infrastructure requirements are going to be pushed out. So that just wanted to clarify for council that although we have those timelines, they're more of guidelines so we can understand our infrastructure needs. That, and again, in addition to Mr. Mercuccio's presentation, follows up my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions for council.
Thank you so much, Mr. Finley. Deputy Mayor?
Thanks for the report, Director Finley. I note that just over the next 10 years, we're looking at about $13 million of projected cost to meet our servicing needs. And water, wastewater, we're looking at 26 plus 7. So we're looking at $33 million. So we're looking at over the next 10 years, finding $46 million, apparently. We've just gone and approved our water rates. Now, the funding for this, we're not due to review the water rates for another 5 years. Do we look at our water rates every 5 years? Is that correct?
Thank you for the question through you, Madam Mayor. We actually, this year, were approved to look at them
Okay,
this year, so that
this
we were
year.
correct.
So I know finance isn't here, but this will inform the report coming from finance in terms of projected changes to our water fees. And, you know, with an eye to building reserves to accommodate that, given that there's no guarantee of upper level government funding, although I'm sure there'll be an appeal to cover some of that $47 million over the next 10 years.
Thank you for the question through Madam Mayor. A couple of different pieces there. Correct. In terms of higher level funding to fund any of those projects, we are always constantly looking to see where we are successful with that. Having these studies completed does help promote that, because a lot of the projects look at how far advanced we are moving forward, so that will help. In terms of the rates, this will more, because these are growth-driven projects, this will more inform the development charge studies, because that's growth. The development charges that we look at placing on new builds are to fund these capital infrastructure pieces. There, of course, will be operational pieces that come with new infrastructure that we'll have to take into account into that financial piece or the operational cost. But a lot of this capital is contributed through the development charges.
Okay. So we rely on development in order to pay for development. Growth pays for growth. That's it in a nutshell.
Correct. That's what we look at when we look for these studies. Yep.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Finley at this stage of the game? I'm not seeing any. I wasn't in receipt of communications earlier today that I think were circulated to members of council in regards to concerns from the development community. I don't have good insight into what those are or were. From my perspective, I do, you know, I think promoting positive relationships with all members of our community and stakeholders are important. I know how hard we work at that, but if there is some misunderstanding or concern about proposed timelines, it certainly, I think, would potentially be in our collective best interest to take a moment to articulate back to those who might be concerned what the logic is in this report before we potentially adopt it in full, unless I can be assured or council can be assured that, you know, those efforts have been made. It does seem that from what I understand, there are some individuals and businesses that feel particularly concerned about the timelines that were proposed in the reports. So I'd like to hear a little bit more on where those concerns might be coming from and how we've navigated them so far. I appreciate your explanation here at the council table, but I don't know if that necessarily resolves in full some of the other concerns that you or other members of council might be hearing, and whether or not we should be taking a pause before full implementation. This is a lot of information to absorb, and it's really great work. We can see that, and a long time coming, but I'd like a better sense of where the stress is at this point.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For my understanding of it, and I did have a discussion with one of the developers, a brief discussion with one of the developers in trying to understand it. And the understanding is that because we showed different timing periods at 0 to 5, or showing a development being built in, say, the 5 to 10 period, that we would hold a development to that construction period. What we clarified with the developer at the time was that those were just to give general population growth, so we could understand the infrastructure needed to support that growth. We don't hold developers to those timeframes. When a development comes forward, they have to be processed as per their application. It'll inform us of if infrastructure needs to be constructed ahead of some of those timing periods. So that was, I think, some of the clarification that the developer was seeking, that it wasn't, we won't look at this development for 5 or 10 years. It's more of, is the infrastructure needed to be brought forward faster because your development's coming forward faster. So that was just my understanding of the clarification they were looking for. We are happy, if it's council's wish, we can go back to the developers and clarify those comments. We would still look at the report shows those infrastructure needs, and again, we have to adjust depending how the development community adjusts. So we are constantly watching the infrastructure needs for those community members.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor?
I'd move for referring this back to staff, given that this communication from one developer came in at 3:30 this afternoon. Council went into a meeting at 5. So unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to read your response, which happened like 8 minutes before we went into a meeting. So, at the earliest convenience, come back with it and address some of the redlined document that was attached to the email that came today at 3:30. I think that would give us comfort to go through it and understand the concerns more completely, and your response, which I haven't read.
So Deputy Mayor, I hear that you're moving to refer so that the concerns of the development community can be responded to and integrated into a forthcoming report to council.
As early as possible.
Indeed.
I don't want to delay anything
I understand.
needlessly, but it's just too tight for this council to deal with.
Understood. So I have a mover. I just need to check. Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Wilson, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor in regards to referral. And I'll look for comments or questions on the motion. Don't see any. Okay, I think Deputy Mayor's proposed timeline is clear, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that carries. Thank you. We appreciate the good work and look forward to revisiting this item sooner rather than later. So with that, I think we are now returning to consent agenda, if I'm not mistaken. We've already dealt with proclamations, Community Living Month being, the breakfast being tomorrow and the flag raising being tomorrow. So moving to consent agenda, there are a number of items. Colleagues and I wish to pull 2. Business licensing bylaws and award Capital Road construction tenders. Would any other member of council like to pull an item on the consent agenda? I'm not seeing. Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure if the minutes of previous meetings were part of the consent agenda or they're a separate item, but I would like to pull that, please.
I believe they are a separate item, but
Separate?
thank you.
Okay.
Yep, section
Okay.
I.
Thank you.
Right. And I'm confirming, Ms. Remming, that the front-ending agreement for Oxford Village oversized infrastructure was already removed as part of an amended agenda.
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. Yes, it was already moved out. I apologize when I had reposted the agenda. I forgot to remove the reference to item H.4.
No problem. Okay. So, council, I will ask for the adoption of the consent agenda as amended. Looking for a mover and seconder. Councillor Strachan, Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. Calling question. All in favor? That carries. Moving on. So, businessing licensing bylaws. Council colleagues, maybe just to provide some context, the reason for me feeling it was important to ensure that this bylaw was discussed in full at council this evening is because I have concerns about bylaw 5426 being a bylaw to regulate open air fires. I haven't had an opportunity to speak to the chief and the CAO about delaying consideration of that particular bylaw this evening, given some concerns that I've expressed. in regards to the mapping in particular. So from my perspective, just so you understand, again, why I pulled this particular item, my concerns were specific to open air fires. And once we hear the presentation from Ms. Martin, I would ask for consideration or someone's indulgence to refer the open air fire bylaw in particular back to our very capable chief and deputy chief for some additional information and reconsideration. But I think before doing that, I'll go to Ms. Martin, who will give us an overview. You might remember that these business licensing bylaws were referred to CDAC. There was some discussion at CDAC before they returned back to us. So Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a slide deck presentation if you would like to pull it up, but I can just perhaps, I have it up on my screen as well, so I'll just start discussing it. So before council this evening is the return of the business licensing and open air bylaws. They were presented back in November of last year as a package because we were also updating the AMPS bylaw, which would bring all of these bylaws under our administrative monetary penalty system. So they're part and parcel, as was explained by our former manager of bylaw services. So the new bylaws that would be enacted are in regards to transient traders, refreshment vehicles, door-to-door sales, as well as open fires. And then we would be amending our AMPS bylaw that would include the relevant contraventions and penalty amounts. So we'd be able to issue penalties under AMPS. If we go to the next slide, there is a brief history that was provided back in November of last year. So looking at the various bylaws and when the last time they were amended, and we adopted the AMPS framework back in 2024. So we've been making those efforts to bring other bylaws under the AMPS system. If we move on to the next slide, these standalone and updated bylaws are now being proposed for the transient trader, refreshment vehicles, and door-to-door sales. Previously, or currently, I should say, they exist as one bylaw, and often what bylaw services finds is that people are misinterpreting different sections and applying them not appropriately to the three business licenses that are currently under that bylaw. So this provides greater clarity by having standalone bylaws. In regards to the open air fires, I'll just speak briefly to it. Fire Chief Ursulak will provide some additional commentary very shortly. So the intent would be to repeal and replace the current bylaw with modernized wording and structure. And I know that the Deputy Fire Chief, as well as Fire Chief and the Administrative Assistant really worked closely to ensure that our policies and wording were more modernized based on our current technologies, as well as to update the boundary that is in Schedule A in regards to the prohibition of open air fires. And under the AMPS bylaw, the bylaw, it integrates the penalties that are and contravention amounts for each of these bylaws. If we go to the next slide, I do provide some benefits in regards to the amendment that would have been provided at our November meeting. If we go to the next slide, I do provide some information. We did take the bylaw in early February to five bylaws to our Economic Development Committee, and their only recommended change was to add fireworks to Section 7 of the open air bylaw. So that would prohibit their discharge during an open air fire ban. And I will turn it over to our Fire Chief Ursulak to speak to the open air fire bylaw revised map.
Thank you very much, Amy. The revised map just reflects the ever-increasing urban boundary, takes into consideration our new developments, Oxford Village, and drops down. And as you can see, it's mostly on the north western end of it, and down on the south there, we drew a line across there as well to reflect the growth along concession. But I do believe this is what the concern that the mayor has is those boundaries correct?
Certainly, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to it now. I think my concern is absolutely there are some very residentially intense neighborhoods for which the open air fire prohibitions should apply, but there are some existing neighborhoods where nothing is really changing in terms of character or residential intensity. These are more rural areas. Certainly that, I guess, arguably would fall within this new urban boundary, but I know my feeling is that many of the property owners would not understand why, after decades of being able to have an open air fire, something is changing when the character of their own neighborhood is not at the present time. Of course, fully support the prohibitions in terms of our rapidly growing residentially intense areas. But I think this mapping takes into account a few neighborhoods where at this time, as I understand it from our conversation, Chief, nothing is really changing in the short term. We're looking many years down the road in terms of other developments coming to fruition, for example, Urbandale. So I am concerned that some of the prohibitions on longstanding existing neighborhoods may feel premature and would not be easily understood by those property owners.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, for that. It's, yeah, it's very difficult to draw those lines. I do understand the concern, so we will revisit this. DC and I will sit down, as well as planning and bylaw, and we'll sit down and come up with something that will maybe incorporate somehow within that urban boundary, those less populated areas, larger lot sizes. You know, keeping in mind too, with burning, there's, you know, complaints as far as, you know, burning complaints, there's lots of that goes on. So we have to be mindful of that as well, the size of the fires, but we will definitely revisit this, take that in consideration.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Ms. Martin, or are we done with the presentation?
That concludes the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Strachan?
Thank you. Through Madam Mayor to Chief Ursulak. I'm just looking at the addition for fireworks, and I appreciate the inclusion of that item. In that paragraph under prohibitions, paragraph 7, the final statement is special events involving fireworks may be allowed during a fire ban pending approval from the fire chief. Is the intent behind that special events would have better protections in place during a fire ban that would allow them to set off fireworks that wouldn't be applicable to, say, a regular resident?
Thank you for the question. And through you, Madam Mayor, that statement was more generalized towards, say, if we use, for example, the Canada Day event, where a company comes in, they have, say it's during a burn ban, they come in, they have their own established parameters. We're on site as well, just to make sure just to kind of keep a look over everything. And you know, a company has come in and deemed that area is safe to do their fireworks practice. I would work with them in that case and see what we can come up with. That's more what that was intending to establish. Keeping in mind, you know, we had a burn ban on last year for quite a bit of the summer. I don't remember if it was in July over the Canada Day weekend, but I know it was quite dry during that area as well. But, you know, we do have to be mindful these days. You know, even now we have a burn ban on now, as we know. A lot of people are upset at me for that, upset at us for that, because they can't quite understand why we have a burn ban on. But being mindful of that, you know, that's all that was trying to take in was any kind of a special event as that would be, like, I'll pick on July 1st as well, Canada Day. I would take that into consideration, providing that the proper requirements were met on the other side. So if that makes any sense.
Okay, Council, anything else? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to Chief Ursulak. What I know, I appreciate how difficult it is to draw boundaries because some people will be in the boundary, some people will be outside of the boundary, and there's no perfect way. But when you're drawing the boundaries, is it possible to look at whether the residence is serviced by our water system or whether they're on well and the lot size? Can those two things be some determining factors? Certainly the lot size. I appreciate in a lot of the urban serviced area, it's rather dense, but there's other areas within the serviced area that have got larger sort of rural sized lots. And I know you've carved those out in some cases, but in other cases not. And I'm just thinking of Heard Street in particular. A lot of people on the west side of Heard Street don't have, they're on well and septic, right?
Through you, Madam Mayor, thanks for that question. Again, we debated long about Heard Street, and then, it was just a matter of trying to, like you just said, some people can burn, some people can't. So trying to come up with a solution that encompass that urban boundary, and speaking from someone that's been to many, many burn complaints on Heard Street, because of course the smoke drifts into the settlements that are the more dense settlements that are next door. So, trying to weigh all that in, but we'll have to look at that as well. I think that's what Madam Mayor was alluding to, as we will take into consideration some of these larger lot sizes versus their location to see if we can come up with a better solution.
When we finally, act like King Solomon and divide between burners and non-burners, will there be a communication effort involved to inform those people, especially on a place like Heard Street that you're in and you're out, and please be considerate?
Yes, we can do that through our system that we have now of our fire permit system. It is very difficult, but we have to be mindful that we are a growing community and that urban boundary is expanding. And we just have a lot more people here and I know it's difficult because, as the mayor alluded to, we've had people that have been living in those settlements for 40 years, right? So it's very difficult to try and implement something like this and keep everybody happy. We'll do our best to communicate that out to everybody in those areas. I believe we pulled numbers, I can refer to my deputy here, to how many permits were along, do you have those numbers? I think it was 26 permits, correct?
Yeah, close to 30.
I think there was close to 30 permits up along Heard Street into Cranberry Crescent and around there. So not a huge amount of permits in that area. Most of our permits are in the outlying areas anyways, but that was what we found when we went back and researched through the system. So not dealing with huge numbers, but still enough that, yeah.
Yes, and then I believe our CEO wishes to say something. Go ahead.
Way to preempt you, CEO Dunlop, but is fire insurance rate a consideration? Not that you would know, but is there liability for the municipality for drawing a boundary that excludes someone or includes someone or excludes someone from burning or includes someone for burning that shouldn't be? Are we I mean, it seems to me this would, if a fire is the result of someone burning in their backyard where it's permitted, is there a certain liability? Are we under the scrutiny of insurance companies in terms of drawing these boundaries?
Through you, Madam Mayor, thanks for that question. I'm going to have to look for, let me defer that. Let me look, see what I can find out about that. It does appear from my long tenure that it's mostly the ones that you're dealing with that are burning that shouldn't be burning because they don't have a permit anyway. So they don't abide by the rules, some people, or not the rules, but maybe didn't call it in or didn't don't have a permit or don't know. We've had a lot of people that are new to the area that don't know about permits. And so, but I will look into that, and I don't believe that the insurance would be affected like that, but I can look into that.
Okay, great. And we'll hear from Ms. Dunlop, and I think then we'll try to get closer to a motion. Councillor, Councillor, sorry. I've taken to calling Mayor Robin Jones minister on occasion at County Council. So Councillor Dunlop, go for it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as a point of interest, not changing the outcome of where I anticipate we're going this evening, was that there is a transition program that is embedded within this, that if you have a burn permit today within the areas, that would be a consideration until the end of the year, as I think we all know that our burn permits are an annual renewal requirement. So I believe that was a consideration, although looking at the mapping and where we're going is we will come back as soon as possible.
Thank you. So with that in mind, if I could ask for your indulgence, Council, given the Chief and Deputy Chief's kind consideration of some of the concerns raised, I would ask that perhaps we move a motion to enact all bylaws listed under the business licensing bylaws, except for 5426, where the chief has agreed to come back with some more nuance and rationale in terms of changes of mapping. Councillor Sullivan, are you willing to move that?
If I may, I just have a point of clarification regarding the, under the same item, the bylaw for door-to-door sales.
Yes.
And where was the other? Transient traders, yes. I just wanted to clarify that the people who are covered by this bylaw are selling merchandise, not services. Is that correct? So people who are coming door to door to sell their services for sealing your driveway or aerating your lawn or cleaning your windows, they are not bound by this bylaw to have a license. Is that correct? Because I see the prescribed merchandise listed in item number 5 under licensing provisions, but nothing about selling services.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Is it you who would answer that question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so in regards to that, the list provided identifies what we wouldn't issue a license for. So typically our door-to-door sales for licensing is more service-based, such as Bell or Rogers when they're going around and selling their telecommunication services. And I believe potentially Enbridge or any kind of other service. I'm just looking at Officer Lazat just for some confirmation on that. So it wouldn't regulate the kind of the sales of merchandise, but it's more service-based. So if they're offering a service, then yes, but if they're offering merchandise, then no. They wouldn't be able to get a license under that bylaw, under the door-to-door sales licensing bylaw.
So they do require a license then if they're going door to door and selling services to resurface your or seal your driveway or clean your windows, etc.
Yes.
Unless they're a student entrepreneur.
I don't believe the bylaw provides that distinction through Your Worship. In regards to students, I think it's just any service that you're going door-to-door selling would require a license underneath this bylaw. And again, it's for us, it's also a public awareness piece when we do issue a license, because there are people who do go to door there in the past that have been disingenuous. The whole point of us being aware of the sale of services is that we do post on social media and on our website when one is issued, the period of time in which it's been issued for, and then we provide that heads up to the public to say that there is somebody going around, and if there are concerns about the service or whether if this is a legitimate service, they can call the municipality and verify with that license number with us.
Okay, thank you.
So if you have a 12-year-old wanting to go door to door and offer snow clearing services, are they in contravention of the bylaw as presented this evening?
Thank you, Your Worship. Reading down to the exemptions, it does not apply to, child and youth entrepreneur initiatives and registered charitable organizations. So there is an exemption for youth and children who might go to their neighbor to offer to clear their driveway. We wouldn't require them to go through a license. We view that separately. And again, like in the registered charity piece, someone going door to door canvassing for heart and stroke or any of the variety of different charities out there would also be exempted from the bylaw.
And how do we ensure the exemption, given the proliferation of fraudulent presentation, right, of organizations that appear to be legitimate? Where does we just rely on the self-identification of someone, say they're with Amnesty International, right, and they have a badge that looks very official? We're just presuming that there is no mechanism by which we can validate the activities of not-for-profits?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that's a big public education piece that we could speak to in regards to individuals who are canvassing door to door for charities. We can't, if we do receive a complaint, we can, certainly look into what we might be aware of is happening in the area. My general advice to residents would be, if you have someone coming door to door, you're not certain if they're a legitimate charity or not, would be to take their information and not make a donation at the door, and then do your own research, follow up, Google the organization to see if do they exist. Talk to your neighbors, but perhaps at that point of them canvassing, not making that donation on the spot, but rather looking online and doing research that way as well. They shouldn't, from past experience, having done fundraising myself for different charity organizations, whether it's with the kids of school or otherwise, you should never use pressure tactics in getting to somebody to provide a donation. So if you are feeling pressured, perhaps that is a bit of a red flag. So perhaps we can also do some general education through our own social media here at the municipality in regards to that piece as well. And I believe we have done so in the past.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions, colleagues? If not, once again, just looking for your indulgence to move the motion that we accept all bylaws this evening, but 5426, yes, I apologize. Go ahead, Ms. Martin.
I would recommend, Your Worship, to defer all of the bylaws because of how they're set up in regards to the amending of the AMPS bylaw. They were intended to go together as one package. It would create some complexities if we were to pull one bylaw out and not the other based on how the AMPS bylaw is currently written without having to make major amendments to the bylaw on the fly.
Okay. So then we will defer the consideration of this motion, subject to Council refer. We are referring the business licensing bylaws then. So we'll look for a motion to refer the business licensing bylaws to Chief and Ms. Martin for return at the earliest possible date. Councillor Sullivan, you're willing to move that? Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor, thank you. All right, any other concerns or questions at this stage? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Okay, that passes. Next on our consent agenda was award Capital Road construction tenders. And I did just want Mr. Finlay to speak to the context for these particular projects. I don't know if individuals are aware, but there's quite a bit of concern in the construction community around asphalt pricing, given volatility in the market, global warfare, among other things. So I just wanted Mr. Finlay to speak to these particular tenders, given the size of some of them and the process by which the municipality would have elicited the bids. So go ahead, Mr. Finlay.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So the report in front of Council tonight is for our Capital Road projects. These were all open bid tenders that were put out in March, closed at the beginning of April. We did receive a number of submissions for each one that are presented in the reports. To start, we have crushed rock, so that's our granular A and granular B for our granular road repairs, or road rebuilds, sorry. We are looking based on the Based on the bids that were provided, we are looking to award that to GIP Paving Incorporated, as they were the lowest compliant bid. We did note that the prices were for granulars did seem similar to previous years. The next tender that we again issued, all tenders were issued at the same time and closed one after the other. We did have public openings for them as well. Was the surface treatment tender. I guess I should go back for the granular rebuild. So that's for Eager Road, O'Neill Road, and the section of River Road that we're going to rebuild. Surface treatment, that looks at Edward Scott Road, Slater Road, slurry seals, and then the surface treatment for Hess Road, Norton Road, and Town Line Road, as well as Anniversary Way, Veterans Way, and Honor Way. We did receive 2 prices for that. And again, lowest compliant bid was from Miller Paving Limited, and that is our recommendation moving forward with that. We did, in terms of asphalt repaving, we did break up this tender. Typically, it's done on one tender. However, due to understanding some potential changes in costs and trying to work with the contractors in terms of pricing, we did break it up to rural paving, which are usually much larger stretches. They typically run over a kilometer. Most of them are 1.4 kilometers for River Road. Town Line Road's 1.8 kilometers, and an overlay Craig Road 2.65 kilometers. So they're longer in stretch. And then we had a smaller urban paving tender, which incorporated a number of roads, but were only less than, a section of Barn Street, Dumbrill, Georgiana, and Topmar. Those all incorporated were just about 0.6 of a kilometer. So it's a smaller portion that was being paved. So we did break out those to see if that would help with some of those costing items. Based on the results that we had there, the urban paving, we were looking at Blair Asphalt Products Limited. They were the cheapest overall tender there. And we were looking at GIP Paving, again, for the rural asphalt paving. All these contractors that are listed are well informed in the business that they do. We have worked with all these contractors in the past. They're very capable of doing the projects that we identified. And I'm happy to answer any questions from council.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, to the mayor's question, these are the winning bids, and you're not coming to council to approve more than what we had allocated in the budget. So I'm assuming that all these bids are funded through the allocation in the 2026 budget, and that there might be some funds left over that would go into your reserve. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question through you, Madam Mayor. I should have clarified that. That is correct, that all these items are within the approved budget. They're over 50,000, of course, so we're coming back to council for that approval. There is additional work on top of either paving or just the gravel rebuilds. We typically, when we do a gravel rebuild, we have to look at cross culverts. We prepare those ahead of time as well. So there's more costs, and these are just the major capital pieces that we do for these projects. And then there's driveway tie-ins and different items like that. So there is some additional costs that will most likely will run up to our budget allotment by the time we do all those additional pieces, calcium as well, and different things like that. So the award for these major capital projects are within the approved budget.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Finley. I expect you're probably aware that we, as council members, frequently receive phone calls and concerns from residents on some of the rural roads about how dangerous it is to walk on those roads or ride a bike. And so I'm just wondering, when the RFPs went out for these tenders, was it included these would be made as wide as possible, given that rural roads are, not county roads, and there is limitations. But I think if the pavement can be as wide as possible, and then perhaps a line painted to delineate the normal width for a vehicle, so that the additional space is delineated for safer walking, because we hear a lot from people who can't walk their dog down the road because it's so busy and they don't feel safe. So I just wonder, is that part of what goes out to these requests for tenders?
Excuse me. Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that is the intent. We do look at River Road as a perfect example. We do increase that to try and get a 7-meter road surface or driving surface and 1.5 meter paved shoulders. So that is the intent of that 1.4 kilometers that we're looking at. That project will continue as we keep going through River Road. Some of the other gravel rebuilds, we do try and stretch them out to that 7-meter rebuild when we can get that, or we do that. It does make it hard sometimes to get wider in those areas just because of the ditching and some of the rural components. But River Road is a prime example of us looking to do that for the bike routes.
Thanks very much. That's good news.
I guess similarly, I was thinking about Somerville in this context, given that Somerville is a bit of a connector road, it seems, to 43 from downtown Kempville, depending on how you look at it. Of course, Pine Hill being just a little bit further afield is a very viable and safe road because you have those sidewalks. So, but when you look at a road like Somerville, has it been contemplated to shoulder or provide better pedestrian facilities? It's another road where I think increasingly we are hearing about the fact that kids are using it to get to Oxford Village, right? If they're not taking the bus or they're moving around the community. I know it's a tough road. I understand that the question I'm asking isn't an easy one to answer, and I also recognize we're in the middle of an active transportation planning process where perhaps Somerville will be identified as a higher priority when it comes to some active transportation facilities. But for now, looking at the investment in Somerville Road, was shouldering or additional shouldering contemplated, or other pedestrian safety facilities?
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. So when Somerville Road was completed last year, it was purely an asphalt overlay, so it wasn't an expansion piece. When we look through, although we are revisiting, as you mentioned, the mobility master plan, we'll look and identify different locations for active transportation use. The previous transportation master plan, did identify a separated MUP, multi-use pathway, along Somerville. The challenge with that implementation at this point is it will require land acquisition to be able to accommodate that separation. So it is on our list. I don't foresee that changing in terms of having a separated multi-use path on that road. It'll be trying to get the implementation of the land required to do that. So that's the challenge we're facing at this point, and I do imagine we'll see that come up again in the mobility master plan.
That's helpful information to understand that a segregated multi-use pathway was foreseen as an excellent sort of, I guess, evolution of that road. When it comes to property acquisition, just help me understand, because I know in a few other places we've had to do it, right? Like on County Road 44, where I believe properties were approached to sell a bit of the frontage of their lands. Is it a question of, is it a budgetary piece, or is it more of a procedural piece to ensure that the land can be acquired for the eventual establishment of a MUP?
Thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. I think at this point was more a matter of timing. Typically, we do, where it's possible, try and use some of those lands during development applications. We identify the need for that because we have that Urbandale development that pretty well runs most of Somerville Road. That was the intent and has been identified to the developer that there will be some land acquisition needed as part of that as I guess the most financially viable or financially benefit to the municipality to acquire it. So that's what we were looking at. We hadn't explored it further than that at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Colleagues, any other questions in regards to the award Capital Road construction tenders? Seeing none, I'll look for a mover and a seconder then in regards to the adoption of the approved or the proposed tenders as presented today. Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and a seconder. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And I'll just look to any last comments, questions. Not seeing any, I will call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. So we'll keep going then, getting there. Minutes of previous meetings. We've got 3 meetings here, April 9th, 15th, and 21st. The motion is that the following meeting minutes be adopted as presented. Councillors, so we're just looking for a motion. I think if there are amendments to the minutes, we'll entertain them as soon as we have a motion on the floor, unless, actually, Councillor Sullivan, if you wish to bring to our attention any concerns, we can incorporate them into an amended motion. So I'll certainly recognize you. Go ahead.
Okay, Madam Mayor, as you wish. I noted on the minutes from April 9th, it said that I think Deputy Mayor chaired the meeting, but it does say Deputy Mayor Jay Peckford chaired the meeting. So I'm not sure who actually, and I can't recall if you were there, Madam Mayor, or not, or if.
I believe Deputy Mayor John Barkley was there, so we can reflect that amendment in the minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then April 16th, under item G, it said minutes of previous meetings. And it said that they were moved and seconded and carried, but they weren't. There were errors and omissions noted in minutes from all of March 9th, 17th, and 26th in terms of attendance, who was there, who wasn't there. And they were to be reviewed and come back to the next meeting. So they were never carried in that meeting of April 16th.
I believe you're referring to April 15th. Am I mixed up in the dates to which you refer?
Just let me find tonight's agenda.
It was the 16th? The 15th. That's
15th, okay.
Yep.
So April 15th, item G, it said the minutes of previous meetings were approved, seconded, and carried, but they were not, because it was noted that there were errors in the minutes from March 9th, 17th, and 26th. So they were not approved, and they were to be reviewed and come back to the next meeting.
okay. All right. I think we've noted that through the clerk's office. Do you have any questions, Ms. Remy, in regards to that matter? No. Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll seek to ensure that those minutes come back, to your point, if they had not been previously approved. And Ms. Dunlop, do you have any questions?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, but I'm just looking for clarity. I see minutes of previous meetings that were approved were the meeting minutes of March 26th, only listed on the agenda. So I think that maybe we could have an offline discussion with the clerk's office to get clarity on your concerns.
Maybe it was the minutes from March 9th and 17th that were not approved and were to come back.
So in regards to a motion this evening, how would we like to proceed with the approval of minutes? Certainly, there were adjustments for April 9th because we want to include Deputy Mayor as chair. Yes, go ahead.
Might I suggest, Madam Mayor, that council defers these sets of minutes and we'll bring them forward to the next meeting of council for everyone to review once we've had that offline discussion
Sure.
and clarified all those points.
Indeed. So Councillor Sullivan, motion to defer. All right, a seconder, please. Councillor Strachan, thank you. And I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great, thank you. So perilously close, not really. We have several other items. I think I did call the vote, colleagues, so we'll keep going. So level of service, water rescue, and we'll invite our chief back to the table. Go ahead. Oh, and just if you can turn on your mic, thanks.
Sorry. The North Grenville Fire Service provides water and ice rescue as an approved emergency service. This is not a discretionary service. It's an expected, low-frequency, high-risk, very dangerous municipal emergency response action under the existing ENR bylaw. As part of the 2025 Fire Master Plan, one of the key recommendations is to review and update the establishing and regulating bylaw, which has not been updated since 2015. That process includes confirming which emergency services council wishes the fire service to continue providing moving forward. Ontario Regulation 343/22 has introduced new mandatory certification requirements. By July 1st, 2028, any firefighter performing technical rescue, including water and ice rescue disciplines, must be trained and certified to NFPA 1006 standards. Based on all this, council direction is required. The North Grenville Fire Service currently delivers water and ice rescue using existing equipment and training aligned with recognized practices. However, updates are required to ensure full alignment with Ontario Regulation 343/22 and applicable NFPA 1006 standards. If council wishes to continue providing this service, the program will need to be modernized. This includes prioritizing upgrades to aging equipment, followed by a phased training plan over the next 2 years to achieve full compliance with the 2028 regulatory deadline. A staff survey was conducted to assess internal capacity, including the ability of members to meet swim competency requirements and complete the required training, which consists of approximately 2 40-hour certification courses. While participation was not 100%, the results indicate that there is sufficient interest and commitment among members to support continuation of the program at a level that can be delivered safely, effectively, and in alignment with regulatory requirements. If the program is continued, future recruitment will also include provisions to ensure new members meet the required water rescue certification standards. I believe council has the full report. Deputy Chief and I are available for any questions.
Council colleagues? Any questions for the chief, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This isn't a question for the chief, so let me stand down, I guess. But here's another instance where the province is dictating a change in rules and regulations, but they're not necessarily providing any funding for a small rural municipality to accommodate these changes. I think these changes are probably very important, and it seems to be an indication that, you know, close to 80% of our volunteers are interested in taking this training, and I wouldn't want to begrudge them what could be potentially life-saving training. But I guess this is just a whine on my part that, once again, the province has changed what we have to do without providing any means to do it. So we're looking at $260,000 in 2027 and 2028. So that's going to have to come from ratepayers. So we're responsible for doing it, but have no authority to, well, I guess we have ways of funding it, but I'm complaining about it.
Councillor Stracan?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Chief Ursulak, how many water rescues does the fire service perform each year on average?
That's very low frequency, and it could range anywhere from none to, this year we had 2, which we had 2 snowmobilers in the river. And that's the whole problem with water ice rescue. It could happen at any time. Our seasons are changing, our melting patterns are changing, and again, this does not just reflect the winter time. This takes into consideration summer recreational boating. So this is a year-round evolution that we do. But again, very, very extremely dangerous, but very low frequency. But I believe what we're trying to do here is, as you saw by my report, is address the gap of, you saw in the report also, we can refer back to Ottawa to help us, and they're called to all of our water rescue calls, but there is that gap from when they get here to, and as you know, with the ice water rescue, time is everything, right? So we provide that service now, and like I say, I can refer back to many years ago. We had a swimmer in the water who passed away in the water. We had another person dive in after him, which passed away as well. So again, it's very it's very infrequent, the amount of calls you get per year. This year we did have 2, so that is as many as we've saw per year in recent years.
I'm fully in favor of this training. The question was more for my own curiosity as to what that looks like. I think given the environment that we live in, rivers, creeks, all sorts of waters, I think it's necessary training, and it's prudent to make sure that it's required now, but I think it's also prudent to make sure that folks are trained to do so safely. So when we get to it, I'd be in favor of moving this request. Thank you.
And I just, if I could, just like to add that, ways of predicting the ice thickness and things that were, say, the way it was done many years ago with climate change and everything changing in our world, we're not seeing those consistencies anymore. Those can change. And, even the most experienced people out on the river, can have issues. And that's what we're addressing here too, is as our population grows, with growth and factor in all the different factors, this is what we have. So I just wanted to stress that.
I mean, I certainly see climate change as a key driver here, not the only one, to your point, because there's other factors like people who perhaps are not as experienced or familiar with, conditions, be it in the summer or the winter. But I'm hopeful that as we strengthen our own capacity to respond to climate change developments, there may be funding available to support, if not directly, sort of some of the indirect costs that we're navigating as municipalities. So what's exciting about this is you have a highly motivated fire service and volunteers that are willing to be trained, that want to be able to respond, that feel a strong desire to be equipped. And a lot of those volunteers come with considerable expertise as it is. So from that perspective, I think we're leveraging some excellent personnel in the community that can really make a difference in the long run. And, the reality is who better to respond to these sorts of emergencies than people that know the area extremely well and have some familiarity and capacity to get to a site quickly. So like Councillor Strachian, I think this is prudent and necessary at this stage of the game. And we appreciate your commitment to ensuring that we're able to be as responsive as possible. At the counties, we have this conversation all the time, Deputy Mayor, about a whole host of services, whether it's childcare or paramedics or Ontario Works in so many different areas, that sort of cost share or the burden that municipalities or counties bear for a certain provision of services is changing. And I think that's why we have to do everything in our power to seize funding opportunities as they come our way and ensure that, again, we're able to benefit from some financial support where it exists, even if it's not necessarily in the program areas where we may feel that we have more limited options when it comes to ensuring we're keeping pace. But in this instance, I'm really optimistic that this will be a great development for our fire service and for the volunteers who really want to deepen their understanding and their capacity to respond. So I believe, Councillor Strachan, you'd like to move the motion? And you'll do that? Okay. So council approves the continuation to offer water and ice rescue as an emergency service that is provided by the North Grenville Fire Service. This will include amending the establishing and regulating bylaw. And is that bylaw part of our package this evening, or that would be forthcoming? Forthcoming. Okay. So with that, I will look for a seconder. Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I will call the vote. All in favor? Great, thank you. So next, we're going to go back to Mr. Finley in regards to award NG 2602 Rideau River Road sanitary design. Go ahead, Mr. Finley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the report we have in front of council tonight is in regard to the RFP request for proposal that we initiated in regards to the design and tender drawings for the sanitary main that's intended to run on County Road 19 south to Van Buren, and then of course along Van Buren in that catchment area. The municipality did issue the RFP. It did close in April. We did do a thorough review. We did have eight proposals provided to us, which were reviewed for on a number of factors. And we did have a recommendation come out of that review for Applin Martin Consultants Limited. What we did identify through the review, however, is that the amount from the proposal totaled at $118,260, which was above the approved $100,000 budget that council had provided. So staff went back and looked at some of our projects. We did identify that there is the potential to reallocate $40,000 from the Kernahan Network Hub SCADA update project. That project was aligned to work with the water pollution control plan expansion and just some SCADA programming between the two. So as identified, that program or that project could look to be revisited in 2027, which would allow us to reallocate those funds towards this County Road 19 sanitary design. So there's two pieces that we're looking for from council. One would be to reallocate those funds, and then one would be to award the design to Applin Martin Consultants. We do note that there's only $18,260 that we are currently over. What we our staff recommend is the additional funds from that 40,000 could be used as in case there are any other items come up within the project. So it would just be additional amounts for the project as a contingency. So that is the, I should add, if awarded now and we move forward, we do look to see a design, tender-ready design for fall of 2026. So we could move from there. And that's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions from council.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you for that report, Mr. Finley, and through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Finley. I noted from another study, and you're going to ask me what other study or master plan it is. I think it was the Stormwater Master Plan, or the draft of it, that there was a recommendation in there anticipating further development on the other side, the east side of the 416, and that it would be prudent to ensure that the size of the sanitary line down 19 and across Van Buren as far as 416 was large enough to accommodate that future growth on the other side of 416. So I'm wondering if in the scope of work that you requested or in the RFP, whether that was a consideration for the design. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you for the question through you, Madam Mayor. So that would have been our servicing master plan would have identified the east side of the Highway 416 as a serviced area and did recommend that, made that recommendation that we do look at that for County Road 19. So yes, we did include that as part of the proposal. Part of the catchment area includes the those service areas on the east side. So at least the design will reflect that as we move forward.
Great. My question is just in regards to Applin and Martin Consultants. They're one of the names that's the least familiar to me on the list. They obviously scored much higher or notably higher. And I wondered, Mr. Finley, if you can speak to them. As I think you're aware, we're a little bit wary of entities with which we're not that familiar, but I'm sure the scoring was impeccably done. So if you could just give us a little more insight into who they are.
For sure, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question. So we from our side, we have done some work with Applin Martin in the past on some smaller scale items. We did also do some reference checks on some of the previous projects that are similar scale through Smith Falls, Perth, Chatham, Kent area. So we did some, and those reviews came up positive as well, and that was part of our project, or part of our review of their proposals. In terms of Applin Martin, I will say one piece of it that they do identify in their proposal is that they are 100% Canadian owned. So that is one piece they do show for this. Like I said, we did a thorough review of their projects previous past, and we have worked with them before. We are confident they have the expertise to do the job.
Great, thank you very much. So with that, we'll look then to a mover for the motion, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wilson. The recommendation, now a motion, is that Council approve the reallocation of 40,000 from the capital project Kernahan PS Network Hub SCADA update to the NG26 RFP 01 detailed investigation and design, Rita River Road Sanitary Design Project, and that Council award NG26 RFP detailed investigation and design, Rita River Road Sanitary Design to Applin Martin Consultants in the amount of $118,260, excluding applicable taxes. Mover and a seconder. We've got it, and I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great, that carries. So with that, colleagues, I just need the formality of us confirming that we are deferring both J4 and J5. Relevant staff have left, recognizing that it was likely going to be too late for us to do justice and have a fulsome dialogue in regards to both the Affordable Housing CIP and the ARU Initiative Update. So if I could just have a mover and a seconder to formally defer those items. Councillor Wilson, maybe you can do me the honors, and Councillor Strachian moving and seconding the deferral of J4 and J5, subject, and both those items will return, subject to discussions between the CAO, Mayor, and Clerk. The motion's on the table. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great. Carries. Next, and perhaps not most significantly, that would not be fair. Eagerly awaiting the report of the BIA expansion, approval, and bylaw. And I'll look to, is it the CEO or the clerk who's delivering the report? Thank you, Ms. Roman, go ahead.
Absolutely. So I'll try to keep this brief, although I know we've been anticipating it. So just as a refresher, November 19th, the Old Town Kemptville BIA Board of Management voted to request that council make 3 changes to the BIA bylaw. So expand the BIA boundary, change the name to the Downtown Kemptville Business Improvement Area, and for the taxation years 2026, 2027, and 2028, prescribe a different method of calculating the BIA levy for the prescribed assessed properties. So in accordance with the Municipal Act, specifically Section 210, before council can pass a bylaw enacting these requested changes, there is prescribed notice that needs to be served not only to those within the existing BIA boundary, but the suggested expanded boundary. So notice was mailed to these prescribed individuals on Thursday, February 19th. It does allow for these individuals to essentially indicate whether or not they support or object to the expanded area. So we have delivered a total of 94 notices that were issued, 54 properties within the existing BIA boundary, 40 properties within the proposed BIA boundaries, and they were asked to express objections by April 20th, I believe. So out of all of those notices, the clerk's office received a total of 10 objections, 2 objections from within the existing BIA boundary, which represents almost $3,000 of the total 268,000 and change of the municipal levy, and then 8 objections from the proposed new boundary representing 21,500 and change of the total $137,622 of the municipal levy. So essentially, the test under the Municipal Act states that a proposed boundary cannot proceed if objections are received from at least 1/3 of the total eligible objectors, and those objections represent at least 1/3 of a total levy in either the existing or proposed new boundary. So both of these tests under the Municipal Act were not met by the notice requirements. So at this point, it is at council's discretion whether to proceed with the bylaw to accommodate the boundary expansion. Staff have put before you a draft bylaw that accommodates the changes that were requested from the BIA and essentially has the effect of repealing and replacing the existing BIA bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, good stuff. I know that we have 2 particularly engaged members of the BIA here this evening, so I don't know, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Wilson, if you wish to speak at this stage. That's right. I'm sorry. Thank you for the reminder. It was a while ago now that Councillor Wilson declared her conflict. So I'll defer to Deputy Mayor, who I know was quite involved, for any additional context before we consider the bylaw.
As you might have gleaned from the Deputy Clerk's report, it's a rather convoluted, complicated process, and the BIA is a unique animal as far as municipalities are concerned. So on that note, I'd really like to commend the work that our previous clerk and our current soon departing deputy clerk have put into this effort, and truly partnered with a very engaged, energetic board of the BIA. And it was, I would say, torturous to go through all the hoops to get us here. But it, as my council colleague, Councillor Wilson, will know, it's been a 10-year effort at least to do it, with one preempted attempt back in 2016. So it's, I just wanted to have that on the record, that thanks to staff and a very capable board of the BIA, we're at this point where I'd be happy to move the motion connected to the recommendation to accept the changes. And that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? My only question, and perhaps it's laid out in the report somewhere where I'm not seeing it, is this expansion will bring how many additional businesses into the fold?
I believe we don't count the businesses, but we do count the buildings involved. So in the existing boundary, there's 54 properties that are assessed this levy. And in the proposed new boundary, there's 40. In terms of how many businesses, I mean, a rule of thumb is for just basically doubling the size of the BIA. And certainly their budget will be close to what they're used to, if not a little bit more with this change, depending on, you know, they haven't set their budget pending the results of this vote. But I imagine they'll be able to maintain the level of service and representation for businesses downtown to the standard that everybody's grown accustomed to, which is very high.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's nothing else, then, council colleagues, I believe that Deputy Mayor would wish to move the following: that council adopts bylaw 5526, being a bylaw to establish a business improvement area board of management, designate an improvement area, and repeal bylaw 120. Deputy Mayor, you're moving that? Who would like to second? Councillor Sullivan? Great. Thank you. Any comments or questions at this stage of the game? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? All right, that carries. Thank you very much. Congratulations to the BIA on their formidable efforts and council colleagues. All right, next, correspondence. I think you can see a long list of correspondence, colleagues. Is there anything you wish to pull for? Yes, there is correspondence for discussion at this meeting. Ontario Heritage Organization Development Grant Advocacy, Deputy Mayor.
I'm happy to answer questions, but I've got a brief report before I go to a resolution that I've drafted. Perhaps maybe I'll just read my resolution first, and then I can answer questions and provide some information on the background. So I'd like to move that the North Grenville Council supports the February 17th, 2026 correspondence of the Township of McNabb Braeside regarding Ontario Heritage Organization Development Grant Advocacy, and that this supporting resolution and the originating correspondence be circulated to the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Gaming, Stan Cho, Steve Clark, our MPP, AMO, and all municipalities in Ontario. So what this is regarding is, this is the only provincial operating grant available to grassroots nonprofit organizations, heritage organizations, and that for the last 15 years, the maximum grant per organization has been $1,545, and that's remained stagnant for 15 years. So what this resolution from McNabb Braeside suggests is that this grant, this operating grant, or Heritage Organization Development Grant, be reviewed and modernized to restore the original value, so increasing it as per inflation, so inflation adjusted, and that they come up with a multi-year strategy rather than a single year one-off. So that's the background to that resolution, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Colleagues, any questions in regards to this matter? I see none. So with that in mind, Deputy Mayor, we would be looking to formalize the motion that you've just introduced,
Yeah,
correct?
and I took, sorry, but I only gave this draft of this resolution to the clerk this afternoon. So.
Okay. That being said, it was foreseen on the agenda, so do we address the motion this evening, Ms. Riley?
It is listed as a correspondence item. Council is welcome to address at this meeting.
Okay. So perhaps then, would you like to read your motion one more time?
Sure. That North Grenville Council supports the February 17th, 2026 correspondence of the Township of McNabb Braeside regarding Ontario Heritage Organization Development Grant Advocacy, and that this supporting resolution and the originating correspondence be circulated to the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Gaming, Stan Cho, Steve Clark, MPP, AMO, and all municipalities in Ontario.
All right. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Any other comments or questions? I'm not seeing any. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Great. Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you. So that carries, and we're moving on. We can see correspondence for discussion at a future meeting, including Alto High-Speed Rail. So I would like to ask the clerk's office to bring forward some conversation about, or an agenda item where I can provide some additional information about conversations in which the counties has been engaged as it pertains to high-speed rail. So if that can be done, I would appreciate it. Is there any other correspondence that council wishes to flag? Not seeing any. I'll move on. Next, we have a notice of motion for consideration at this meeting. Council colleagues, the recommendation is well laid out. We've had conversation with Canada's Forest Trust Corporation. We've had two discussions, one through an initial discussion of what Canada's Forestry Corporation does for the City of Ottawa, where the City of Ottawa has entered into a partnership in a subsequent discussion where I brought in, I believe, Ms. Dunlop, so that she could better understand organizationally what the value is in a partnership. I don't have all of the answers to questions that you might raise this evening. So given the late hour, I'm happy to defer this. There is a copy of the sponsorship agreement. In essence, Canada's Forestry Corporation is working with a lot of, I would say, mid and larger sized entities, corporate entities, to secure funding from those entities and dedicate much of those funds to the planting of trees in local communities in their catchment areas. So an example is a large business that might have a footprint in Ottawa, but also in North Grenville, that is participating in the Canada's Forest Trust Corporation sponsorship program, would expect that trees would be planted in return for their sponsorship. In some cases, because we have no agreement here in North Grenville with that corporate entity, all the trees will be planted in Ottawa because there's no participating agreement to direct some of those funds to allow for those trees to be planted here. So part of the function of the agreement is to capitalize on existing sponsorships where larger sized companies, out of a intention to demonstrate to their customer base that they care about climate change and the environment, they've made fairly significant corporate contributions through Forest Trust Corporation for tree planting. There is no doubt that municipalities surrounding the city of Ottawa will find themselves in a situation where some of those companies have a presence, not only in the city of Ottawa, but in outerlying communities. But currently there's no mechanism to basically receive funds and direct those funds for the purposes of tree planting in our community. So part of the function of this sponsorship program is to capitalize on funds being raised through these mid and large sized companies that obviously often have multiple franchises, not just in Ottawa and North Grenville, but sort of throughout the province and the country effectively. But my understanding is to date, Forest Trust Corporation has been focused very much on the city of Ottawa and some other large urban centers in other parts of Ontario. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's a great opportunity to get in line for some of this funding. I'm wondering, you referred to maybe generically speaking tree planting, but I think a first step would be to identify what we need and where those trees should be planted. So I'm curious, and you may not have the answer, would that funding also include us identifying the current canopy that we have and assessing it and coming up with appropriate, species of trees and beyond just simply plugging a tree in wherever it can go? And
the municipality is in 100% control of the deployment of the resources. So obviously working with Ferguson Forest Corporation, planting native species, looking at public lands where we can accelerate the planting of trees where maybe none exists or where the community wants to see more tree planting is very much within our purview. This is really an agreement intended to, be able to receive funds that have been sort of raised from larger corporate entities where they recognize there's value in not concentrating their tree planting efforts in one place. Secondarily, it's absolutely an opportunity for our municipality to think strategically about how we'd like to mobilize that tree planting. At this point, in my opinion, this is a nascent effort. There isn't that much spillover between, there's some, which is why we're bringing this to the fore now. But if this program develops momentum, I think there is an opportunity to see more resources come into the municipality, which would then discern through conversation with council and Parks and Rec and Public Works staff how we would properly deploy these resources. Councillor Strachan.
Thank you. Through Madam Mayor to Deputy Mayor, I think to answer your question about efforts that are currently underway, there are 2 advisory committees that are currently looking at ways to address tree canopy and the assets that we have within the municipality. And I believe there's other work that's also happening, but there's definitely active conversations about how to address what we currently have so we know what we need.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. I'm just curious about how to fund it, if there's costs involved, that's all.
Currently, there's existing funding and some won't require much funding at all.
Yeah, certainly. So I think at its core, there is an opportunity as now we've launched our climate action plan to generate some local interest in this mechanism by which private and public sector entities can direct some of their profits to tree planting in the community. So certainly, the first step is capitalizing on monies that have already been raised where businesses have a presence across a particular region. Secondarily, we can have a discussion about how to leverage this particular entity to support the generation of more funds. So I think we're at the beginning stages, should council wish to pass this evening on how to deploy this particular strategy, if you will, to support more tree planting in the community. But at this stage, given the momentum that is being generated through the City of Ottawa, I believe it would be prudent to proceed to enter into a sponsorship agreement and review the status and success of that agreement in a year, and the future council can determine whether or not they wish to carry on with the partnership. Have I answered all the questions that are emerging or top of mind now? All right. I'm going to spare everyone the very long recommendation. It is before you, colleagues. I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Any other concerns or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? All right, that carries. Thank you. So with that, colleagues, we are going to move on. I'll ask if anyone has a notice of motion for consideration at a future meeting. Oh, geez. Yes, thank you. I am so sorry. I apologize. And this is vitally important. So Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
I'll leave it to you to fill in the details, Madam Mayor, but I'm recommending that council direct staff to amend bylaw 50-12 to exempt school buses from the bylaw's restriction on commercial vehicles parked in residential driveways. And I believe, Madam Mayor, you've got some background to the impetus of bringing this forward. I'm happy to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. So certainly the context in which this motion emerges is because of some communications that were received by a couple of different bus drivers. As we know, bus drivers are hard to get in this day and age. They're crucial to the successful arrival and delivery of children to and from school in our community. And it was brought to my attention that often if school bus drivers live in a more residentially intense area, currently they're prohibited from parking their bus, obviously overnight during the school year. If there is a commercial vehicle prohibition, which obviously often there would be, particularly in urban areas. So certainly I did speak to Ms. Martin, and I do understand the reason for a commercial vehicle prohibition for all kinds of reasons, if that makes sense. But I think when it comes to school buses in particular, I wanted council to consider providing an exemption just because, again, bus drivers are really hard to find. And when you have great bus drivers, you certainly don't want to lose them by virtue of limitations for how they have to park that bus over the course of the school year. So the bylaw change that's proposed this evening is in the spirit of that consideration, given some of the experiences that have been shared with my office over the last little while. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that this exemption would not prevent anyone from blocking a sidewalk if their vehicle, whether it was a school bus or some other private vehicle, would be blocking sidewalks. So
I think that's absolutely correct. And maybe Ms. Martin, you want to elaborate on that piece because we know that's an important part of ensuring pedestrian safety.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we do have bylaws in place that require that you do not encumber the municipal boulevard or right-of-way. And that's more so in regards to our ability to maintain, especially in the winter months, our sidewalks. Having vehicles overhanging the sidewalk or into the municipal boulevard can impede our operations. So we do have other bylaws that are in effect that could address that.
For sure. And that makes sense. And we recognize that in certain residential areas, it's unfortunately almost impossible to adhere to those bylaws while also using one's driveway to park a bus. So we understand in this instance that lifting the prohibition on buses from the commercial vehicle prohibition, has limits in terms of what's ultimately achieved, but it does legalize, I think, a fairly legitimate use when it comes to school buses in particular. So I believe, Deputy Mayor, you're moving that. All right, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? All right, that carries. So with that, not to speed through the meeting, haha, that's a joke. We'll move on. Notice of motions for consideration at a future meeting. Not seeing any. Whew. We'll go to petitions and written communications from members of the public. Ms. Remming. All right, miscellaneous and unfinished business. I do not believe we have any this evening. We have business we have deferred, but not business that we have not finished in this moment. Period of questions. Of course, there are no media, and we've worn out all members of the public had they been here. Confirmation bylaws attached to this agenda be read a first, second, third time, and finally passed in open council. Who would like to move our confirmation bylaw? Anyone? Councillor Wilson, Councillor O'Sullivan. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? All right, and we'll move to adjournment. That is that we adjourn at 10:30 p.m. Can I look for a Deputy Mayor and Councillor Strachan? Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.